Hey there, superstar. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Phil M. Jones. He's the author of the book, Exactly What to Say, which has sold 1.4 million copies worldwide. So I thought we'd connect today and share with you two different perspectives on how to make money speaking, how to become $1 million speaker. In this video, we're going to talk about something we have in common. We both have a speaking business, and we both are members of the $1 Million Group at the National Speakers Association, which means we both made a good amount of money doing this work. And so I thought that I'd have this conversation with Phil to share with you together different ways to make money speaking, because we do it very differently. And also because there's a lot of advice out there, a lot of not so good advice about how to become a professional speaker. So I thought we'd connect today and share with you two different perspectives on how to make money speaking, how to become $1 million speaker. All right, Phil, let's go. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right, so let's talk I'll ask the questions, and you can feel free to ask me questions when you see.
I will.
Okay, all right. It's a jam. We're jamming on this topic. What do you see as important in terms of making money as a speaker?
The first thing to think about is to take a longer term view, is to look at this to say, hey, this is a career, and that you have to have some form of business model and ecosystem around it. You want to have something that is scalable, and there's a variety of different ways that you can do that. And you want to be operating on a purpose that is bigger than applause or standing ovations being the prize that you're chasing, because otherwise it runs short. There isn't enough sustenance in the business for it to be able to run the distance it needs to for you to reach some of the higher levels that are possible.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's really my big thing too, is the model matters. Obviously the mission matters, which you're talking about, and also the model. You know, I started out speaking very much driven by the desire for applause, I would say, and the desire for that feeling of being admired and being significant and sharing a message. I mean, that mattered to me. And I did that for a few years and made very little money doing it.
Well, and I started from a very different position as well, where I would speak in corporate roles because I was opening new department stores, and I'd had to either be able to recruit people or train people en masse. I didn't even know it was called speaking at the time. And then when starting my business in this space in 2008, I would speak for credibility. I would speak for opportunities. I would speak because somebody asked me to speak about a topic, not because I was driving a mission, but because I was getting inbound inquiries to say, could you help with blank? And I never knew that there was money to be made on this. I just always saw it as lead generation towards core business.
Well, that's interesting, because most speakers do the opposite, right? Or most people, when they come into speaking, they want to make money speaking. And you and I both did it kind of backwards. We made money not to speak, but we made money from speaking.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly where it started. And in my world I was in the UK. The model of being a professional speaker, certainly in 2007, 8, 9, was something that hadn't necessarily been glamorized. I had an aspiration of maybe one day being like a Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar type individual when I'm old and grey, but thought there was a lot of hoops to be able to get through to be able to get to that. And it was something you did at the end of a career, was where my perception was. So I found this very much by accident, and I would speak at networking events because I had a one-day workshop program.
Yeah.
And events would give me 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes on stage. We'd go from the event to the one-day workshop to one-on-one coaching to a handful of consulting clients. And what happened is then some of those opportunities that I was speaking for clients resulted in me bumping into corporations or bigger groups. I said, hey, can you come speak to my group, and what do you charge? And I'm like, people get paid for that stuff?
Yeah, I know, right?
And then it's learning the business from there that's been really, really intriguing. So what about you? You said that you've been speaking to be able to drive further business. How did your journey map out? Where did this all start for you?
Well, it started for me when I started my business in 2007. So you and I started at similar times.
Yep.
I didn't start with any sort of grand vision. It was one of those take this job and shove it moments where I quit without having any sort of plan. And so as soon as I quit, I was like, I had the oh darn moment where it was like, how am I going to replace my income?
Okay.
That was my objective initially. How do I make as much money as I was making in this job on my own? Okay. And so right away, I was operating from scarcity. You know that. I know that now. So I just basically started selling my time.
God, yeah.
And so I immediately got into consulting. I was like, pay me $500 for an afternoon. I'll do whatever you want.
Well, and a coaching business or a consulting business has a lot more predictability in its revenue, right? Is that you can have somebody who's paying you a certain amount of money per month or a certain amount of money per sessions. It isn't like the crazy up and down of waiting for a date for a person and a fee, which is what we see so many people in this industry focused on, is like, what's your fee, what's your fee, what's your fee? But it ends up with us having feast and famine from a business model.
Well, I ended up going that way because I didn't know any better. Because so what happened was I was doing the consulting, and I did have a couple clients on. I mean, I had one big retainer client that the moment I lost that client, it was like plunged back into poverty again.
Big change. One client,
one
too much
client,
revenue.
all of it. Exactly. So what happened to me is the Miami Beach Chamber. I got involved in the chamber to try to generate more consulting business. And I was in a committee where they said, hey, we need somebody to deliver a workshop on this topic. And somebody looked at me and said, why don't you do it? And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to lead a workshop or any of that stuff. But I was like plunged into it, and I did it, and I loved it so much that I started doing my own. And
what did you love? Like, you say you loved it and you lit up. I want to know what that love was.
I loved creating the content.
Right.
I loved I'm a creator.
Yeah.
I loved sitting down and mapping it out. I love outlines and structures, as you've seen.
Yeah.
I loved delivering it and being a star in the center of the room. And I loved at the end of it when everybody came up to me and said, that was amazing. You changed my life. Or I never thought of it that way. That was just such a great feeling.
So almost the whole understanding the puzzle, then writing a game plan to deliver the puzzle, then showing up to deliver your solution, and then getting the payoff at the end. It was like the whole thing, loving every part of the process.
I loved every part of it. And I thought, I can do this again. I'll do this for myself. So I started leading workshops of my own. And I would invite people, and they'd pay $37 for a spot at my event.
I did some 29-pound events, and then get braver and do a 47 pounds, and then a 69, and then a 97, and then a 197, and then a 297, and then we're thinking, is this 7 thing really real?
And I know, right? I still use 7s, Phil. My program is 9-7 at the end.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got into it, and I got hooked. And then eventually I started getting sponsorship revenues for those events. Eventually the events got bigger. I started doing the Women's Success Summit, and they started making a lot more money. And it took me several years to figure out that I could stand up at these events and then sell my services.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the process of discovery that realized that you can't do any one thing.
Right.
That they all have to be able to lead into some form of ecosystem or some form of model.
Indeed.
That it isn't necessarily like, oh, you're on stage to speak to get paid a sum of money. You spend the rest of the time hanging out with loved ones, taking beach time, like sipping margaritas. Like, it's not necessarily that.
That's so interesting. Thank you, Phil. That was part 1, and I highly recommend joining us for part 2 of this conversation.
People often ask me what I should charge as a professional speaker. There's no one direct answer to it, but a mindset I would have people coming from a position of confidence on, if they're looking to be able to run the distance, is never to charge more or to have a fee that's better than their current confidence of being able to deliver. So you always want to be better than your fee.